Let me ask you something honest. You have tried cutting calories before. You have done the cardio. Maybe you have even tried fasting for weeks straight. And yet that stubborn belly fat is still there. Not the soft kind you can grab, the deep kind. The kind sitting wrapped around your organs. It stares back at you every single morning. And no matter what you do, it barely moves. That is not a willpower problem. That is a hormone problem. Here is what almost nobody tells you. The reason that deep belly fat refuses to move has almost nothing to do with how hard you are working in the gym. It has everything to do with a specific receptor. Your visceral fat has 4 times more of this receptor than any other fat tissue in your entire body. Once you understand that one fact, everything about stubborn belly fat starts to make sense. And everything you have been doing wrong becomes obvious. There is one specific type of green tea that directly targets this receptor system. Not because of caffeine. Not because it kills your appetite either. It works because of a single compound buried inside it that changes how your stress hormones actually interact with your fat cells at a biological level. By the end of this, you will understand exactly why your belly fat is so stubborn. You will understand exactly how this green tea compound breaks that cycle permanently. You will also know the exact steps to follow. The timing, the combinations, the exercise approach to start seeing real and measurable results on your body. This is not guesswork. Every piece of this connects back to real physiology. So let us start from the very beginning and build this understanding properly. Most people think fat is just fat. They believe if you eat less and move more, the fat comes off evenly everywhere, and the belly eventually disappears too. That is not how the body works. Visceral fat plays by a completely different set of biological rules than any other fat on your body. Visceral fat is not the soft, jiggly fat you can pinch on your sides. It is the dense fat wrapped tightly around your liver, kidneys, and intestines. It is metabolically active in the worst possible way. It pumps out inflammatory compounds constantly. It disrupts how your body handles insulin every single day. Visceral fat is directly linked to cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, hormonal dysfunction, and a long list of serious chronic conditions doctors worry about most. But here is the detail that explains everything. Your visceral fat cells have approximately 4 times the number of glucocorticoid receptors compared to fat anywhere else on your body. Glucocorticoid receptors are essentially docking stations built specifically for stress hormones. Cortisol docks there, adrenaline docks there, epinephrine docks there too. This means your visceral fat is tuned into your stress hormone system at 4 times the sensitivity of every other fat tissue you have in your body. Every single cortisol spike sends a signal directly and powerfully into those visceral fat cells. And in modern life, cortisol is spiking constantly throughout the day. Poor sleep spikes cortisol. Skipping meals spikes cortisol. Pressure at work spikes cortisol. Screens at night spike cortisol. Sitting in traffic spikes cortisol too. Now here is the part most people get completely backwards. Cortisol is not actually a fat storage hormone by nature. It is a mobilization hormone by design. Its original biological job was to flood your system with energy so you could physically respond to a real and immediate threat in front of you. Run from a predator. Fight for survival. Sprint across dangerous terrain. In that ancestral context, cortisol and adrenaline together were genuinely powerful fat-burning signals. The critical problem is that those fat-burning signals only actually work when your insulin level is low, when there is no food actively being digested in your system. Think about it this way. Imagine you just ate a big carbohydrate-heavy meal. Then your boss calls and threatens your job. You sit there, stressed, not moving at all. Your cortisol is high, your adrenaline is high, but your insulin is also high from the food. That combination does not burn fat. It stores it, specifically in visceral fat. This is the trap that modern life has set for almost everyone walking around with stubborn belly fat they cannot seem to lose no matter what they try. Stress spikes cortisol. Life is stressful constantly. You eat because you are stressed or because it is simply mealtime. Insulin rises. Cortisol is still elevated. Visceral fat grows. Now you understand the root of the problem. The solution has to address both sides of this equation simultaneously. That is exactly what this green tea strategy does. There was a study that examined green tea's direct effect on fat oxidation measured over a full 24-hour period in real human subjects under controlled conditions. They compared people who consumed nothing extra, people who took caffeine alone, and people who consumed green tea, both with and without additional caffeine added. The results confirmed something very important. Caffeine alone had a modest fat burning effect, but the green tea group outperformed caffeine alone in a way caffeine could not explain. The difference came down to one specific polyphenol, a catechin found in green tea called EGCG. The full name is epigallocatechin gallate. Remember that name. What EGCG does inside your body at the biochemical level is genuinely remarkable. And once you understand the mechanism, you will never think about green tea the same way again. Inside your body there is an enzyme called catechol O-methyltransferase. Scientists call it COMT for short. COMT has one main job in your body every single day. Its job is to break down catecholamines. Those are your stimulant and stress hormones, specifically epinephrine and norepinephrine. Think of COMT as the body's cleanup crew for adrenaline. After your body releases adrenaline in response to stress or stimulation, COMT comes in, deactivates it, clears it out, and brings your system back down to baseline quickly. Eggs from green tea directly inhibits COMT. It puts the brakes on that cleanup crew. It slows the deactivation process down significantly and deliberately. The result is that your epinephrine, your adrenaline, stays active in your system for a meaningfully longer period of time than it normally would without green tea. It keeps circulating. It keeps sending its signal throughout your body. And because visceral fat has 4 times the receptors for exactly this signal, it gets hit hardest. The fat mobilization effect from that prolonged epinephrine hits visceral fat harder, faster, and longer than it hits any other fat tissue anywhere else in your body. Now here is where most people immediately get confused when they first hear this. They think, wait, is more adrenaline circulating actually a good thing for fat loss? You might be thinking that more stress hormones hanging around for longer sounds dangerous, like it would cause more problems, more fat storage, more stress on your system overall. Here is the critical distinction you need to understand clearly. Epinephrine circulating in a low insulin environment is a pure fat burning signal. That is its function. It tells fat cells directly to release their stored energy so your body can use it as fuel. That is the signal working exactly as it was biologically designed to work. Epinephrine circulating alongside high insulin is where the problem begins. Insulin blocks the fat-releasing signal completely while simultaneously locking in the fat-storing signal instead. This is precisely why when and how you use green tea matters enormously. It is not about drinking a cup of tea randomly throughout the day and expecting results from that alone. It is about using this compound deliberately, in the right metabolic state, at the right time, So the COMT inhibiting mechanism actually fires in your favor fully. The single most important condition for green tea to do its job effectively on visceral fat is a genuinely low insulin environment. That means a properly fasted state. Not just technically fasted, actually fasted, meaning your insulin levels have had real time to come back down to a true resting baseline after your last meal. Here is what this protocol looks like in actual practice starting from the night before. Your last meal the night before your fasted morning should be nutritious and genuinely complete. You want to enter your fast from a position of nutritional sufficiency, not from a place of depletion. Depletion increases the chance your body breaks down muscle instead of fat. Get your protein in the night before. Get your micronutrients in. Go to sleep well-fed in the right way so your body has everything it needs going into the fast. When you wake up the next morning, instead of reaching for food or a carbohydrate-heavy breakfast that spikes insulin within the first 30 minutes of your day, reach for green tea. Specifically, if you can use matcha, do it. Matcha is a powdered, concentrated form of whole green tea leaves. It delivers a significantly higher concentration of egg-CG than regular steeped green tea. It is cleaner. It is more potent. It gives you a steady, calm, focused energy that supports your fasted state naturally rather than fighting against it or disrupting it. In your fasted state, sip your matcha slowly. Let the egg-CG do its work at the cellular level. Let epinephrine build and circulate throughout your system without interference. Your insulin is low. Your visceral fat receptors are essentially wide open. The fat-releasing signal is going to hit them directly, repeatedly, and without being blocked by insulin. Now, here is an addition to this morning stack that most people dismiss too quickly, and they are making a significant mistake by doing so. Apple cider vinegar. 1 to 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar diluted in water, consumed during your fasted morning window alongside your green tea. This addition changes the equation noticeably. Apple cider vinegar gets converted inside your body into a compound called acetate. Acetate is a short-chain fatty acid that can cross directly into the mitochondria of your cells. The mitochondria are the energy-producing engines inside every cell you have. Acetate provides them with a direct fuel source that keeps them working even in a fasted state. But more importantly than that, acetate activates something called AMP, AMP-activated protein kinase. AMP is essentially your body's cellular low-energy alarm system built into every cell. When AMP gets activated, the cell behaves as if it is in an energy deficit, whether it technically is or not. It immediately upregulates fat oxidation in response to that signal. It pushes the cell toward burning stored fuel rather than holding on to reserves. It essentially tells the cell, dig into storage now, we need energy, stop conserving. So what you now have working together simultaneously is a genuinely powerful triple stack. Each piece of it supports and amplifies the others in a specific physiological way. Green tea is elevating and prolonging epinephrine through COMT inhibition, targeting those visceral fat receptors directly with a sustained and amplified fat-releasing signal. Apple cider vinegar is activating AMP at the cellular level, pushing your fat cells into a fat-burning deficit state that makes them more likely to release stored energy. And the fasted condition itself is keeping insulin low enough that none of these fat-releasing signals get blocked, reversed, or overridden by an insulin response from food. This is the metabolic environment where visceral fat actually begins to move consistently. All three conditions working together at the same time is what creates the real result. Now, most people do the morning protocol correctly and then completely undo all of that work with the first meal they eat when they break the fast. Do not do this. When you break your fast, your cortisol is still elevated. Fasting is a mild biological stressor on the body. That is part of why it works, but cortisol does not drop instantly. If you break your fast with a high carbohydrate meal, toast, cereal, fruit juice, oatmeal, you spike insulin sharply at the exact moment cortisol is still running high in your system. High cortisol plus high insulin together. That specific combination is the precise metabolic signal that tells your body to store incoming energy directly into your visceral fat regions. You will have spent the entire morning fasted, sipping green tea, activating AMP with apple cider vinegar, and then reversed a significant portion of it with one poorly timed carbohydrate meal. Break your fast with high-quality protein instead. Eggs, fish, chicken, Greek yogurt. These foods do not spike insulin anywhere near the way carbohydrates do in the same quantity. Protein does elevate insulin modestly when digested, but protein simultaneously elevates glucagon as well, which counterbalances the insulin effect and keeps your metabolic environment far more stable. This allows your cortisol to gradually come down on its own, naturally, without being met by a sharp insulin spike that immediately redirects your body's energy toward fat storage. Once you are further into your eating window, later in the afternoon or into the evening, that is when you reintroduce carbohydrates more comfortably and with far less risk. By that point, cortisol is lower. The biological stress of the fast has passed. Your body handles carbohydrates in a more stable and forgiving metabolic state at that time. The rule to remember is straightforward. Cortisol is high when food enters your system. Keep insulin low. Cortisol is low when food enters your system. You have flexibility. Now let us talk about the exercise side of this equation. Diet and the morning supplement stack will take you a significant distance toward reducing visceral fat meaningfully. But if you want to truly maximize the result, if you want to actively accelerate the rate at which visceral fat comes off, the type of exercise you choose matters enormously. Long, slow, steady-state cardio alone is not the most effective answer here. Not because it is useless, but because it does not create the hormonal environment that targets visceral fat most directly. What you want is variable oxygen demand training, alternating deliberately between moderate intensity steady state work and short, sharp, high intensity bursts within the same training session. A structure that works extremely well practically looks like this. 5 minutes of Zone 2 cardio first. This is a moderate, sustainable, conversational pace. An incline treadmill walk is perfect. Your body is moving. Fat oxidation is active. You are warming the system up without spiking cortisol excessively or driving your heart rate into an unsustainable range too quickly. Then 2 minutes of genuine high-intensity Zone 4 effort immediately after. This is where you push hard and deliberately. A stationary bike works beautifully for this specific transition. It is low impact on your joints. It allows you to genuinely sprint at maximum effort without the injury risk that comes from sprinting at full speed on a treadmill under fatigue. Push your output hard for those 2 minutes. Then return immediately to 5 minutes of Zone 2. Repeat this cycle for the full duration of your training session consistently. What this alternating pattern forces is something very specific inside your body. It repeatedly shifts your oxygen demand and your fuel sourcing back and forth in rapid succession. The brief, intense bursts spike epinephrine sharply and rapidly. The Zone 2 recovery periods that follow allow fat oxidation to ramp up significantly in direct response to that epinephrine spike. Because you are in a low insulin state, especially if you are training fasted or within a low carbohydrate window, that epinephrine signal hits visceral fat receptors with full force. The fat gets mobilized during those recovery periods. It gets pulled out of visceral storage and used as fuel. And this effect continues for hours after your actual training session ends. The Norwegian 4x4 research supports this structure directly. Short, high-intensity intervals separated by moderate-paced recovery have been shown to reduce visceral fat more effectively than equivalent steady-state exercise alone. The hormonal environment created by the contrast between intensity levels is the key driver. You are not just burning calories during the workout. You are creating a sustained hormonal cascade afterward. That cascade continues mobilizing visceral fat long after you have left the gym, showered, and gone about the rest of your day. That is the compounding effect of this protocol working. Now, there is one factor that sits underneath all of this, underneath the green tea, the fasting, the exercise, the meal timing, that most people dramatically underestimate. Sleep. Everything in this entire protocol is actively undermined by poor sleep. Not slightly compromised, actively undermined. Chronically short or broken sleep is one of the most powerful drivers of visceral fat accumulation that exists. Sleep deprivation elevates cortisol directly. It spikes ghrelin, your primary hunger hormone, making you significantly hungrier the following day, regardless of what you actually ate before. It blunts your insulin sensitivity considerably. It reduces your body's ability to oxidize fat efficiently, even when every other condition in the protocol is being executed correctly. If you are following every step of this, the green tea, the apple cider vinegar, the fasted window, the protein first meal, the variable intensity training, but sleeping 5 hours a night, you are working against yourself. Prioritizing sleep is not optional when reducing visceral fat is your actual goal. It is the foundational condition that allows every other piece of this system to function properly. Think of sleep as the recovery environment where all of your daytime work either compounds into results or slowly gets reversed night after night without you realizing it is happening. When sleep is genuinely optimized, your cortisol rhythm resets properly and completely overnight. Your growth hormone peaks during deep sleep stages, which actively promotes fat oxidation while you rest. Your insulin sensitivity gets restored while you sleep. You wake up in a metabolic state where the fasted green tea protocol, the exercise, the meal timing, all of it fires correctly. When sleep is broken, insufficient, or poorly timed, cortisol never fully resets overnight. You wake up already carrying a low-grade stress state before the day has even started. You are hungrier. You make worse food choices without fully realizing why. Your body is less responsive to fat-burning signals, and the visceral fat holds on more tightly as a result. Build sleep into this protocol with the same deliberate intention you give to the morning stack and the exercise structure. It is the multiplier that makes the entire system work harder. Let us now bring the complete picture together so you have it clearly in one place and can actually implement it starting from tomorrow morning without confusion or guesswork slowing you down. Visceral fat is uniquely stubborn because it has 4 times the glucocorticoid receptors of other body fat, making it directly and powerfully hyper-responsive to your stress hormone system. Modern life keeps cortisol chronically elevated in almost everyone. When cortisol collides with high insulin, which is exactly what stress eating and poor meal timing creates, visceral fat grows stubbornly. Green tea, specifically matcha for its higher egg C concentration, inhibits the COMT enzyme and keeps epinephrine circulating longer in your system than it would naturally otherwise. In a genuinely fasted, low insulin state, that prolonged epinephrine signal hits your visceral fat receptors hard and mobilizes stored fat to be used as actual fuel by your body. Apple cider vinegar stacks directly on top of this by activating AMP at the cellular level, pushing your fat cells into a deficit state that makes them actively release stored energy. Breaking your fast with protein first prevents cortisol from colliding with a sharp insulin spike, protecting and preserving the entire fasted morning's worth of fat-mobilizing work you have already done. Variable intensity exercise, Zone 2 alternating with brief but genuine Zone 4 effort, creates the specific hormonal cascade that continues visceral fat oxidation for hours after training ends. And sleep resets your cortisol rhythm overnight and restores your insulin sensitivity, ensuring that every other piece of this protocol functions at its full biological capacity the next day. This is not a hack. It is not a shortcut. It is a physiologically coherent system where every single piece actively supports and amplifies every other piece simultaneously. Once you understand why each step works, not just what to do, but the actual mechanism driving the result, you can apply this thinking to every decision about food, movement, and recovery. Start with the matcha tomorrow morning. Start with the fasted window. Add the apple cider vinegar. Break your fast with protein. Train with intentional intensity variation. Sleep like it genuinely matters. Because it does matter. More than almost anything else in this entire equation. Every piece of this works, but only when you build the whole system, not just the parts you find convenient.